Am I the butthole for telling my daughter it's her fault that her babysitter quit? I have 3 kids, 6, 4 and nearly a year old. When I was pregnant with my youngest, I hired a sitter to pick the other 2 up from school and watch them. We really liked her and appreciated her. My eldest loved her babysitter, but she began to develop a huge attitude. I know one of her friends has a nanny who she's basically allowed to boss around with little consequence. We told my daughter that her sitter is in charge and she's to respect her, not demand things of her. A few months ago, the sitter asked my daughter to grab the baby's diaper bag and my daughter sassed back saying, "You can't tell me what to do, I'm the boss of you." Sitter told me that night and I immediately addressed it, in front of the sitter. I told my daughter that was not acceptable, she's not the boss of anyone, and I took away her TV privilege for a week. It happened again just a month later and I had a much sterner talk with her, took away more privileges. Both times I made her verbally apologize and write a note of apology to her sitter. The sitter accepted it, but I could tell she was losing patience. I didn't blame her and ended up giving her a raise out of guilt. I also stopped arranging playdates for her and the friend who treated her nanny terribly. They don't go to the same school, so they don't see each other at all anymore. I'll add I did try talking with my daughter calmly and asking why she felt this was okay. She'd say, "We pay her, I'm her boss." And I said no, that's not true. I said she is hired to take care of her and deserved respect. My daughter would always seem to understand. Well, things came to a head a few weeks ago. My daughter was acting up. Sitter had tried several de-escalation tactics but finally told her to go have quiet time in her room. My daughter screamed in her face, "I'm the boss of you. I'll get you fired." The sitter calmly picked up the phone and called me. We have cameras in our house which she knew about, and told me to come home, immediately. Upon arrival, she quit. Nothing I said or did could make her stay, and I understood. I was furious with my daughter and let her have it. She had several things taken away from her and she didn't do anything remotely fun until recently. This whole thing has left us in a bind. Luckily, the school that my younger 2 go to is open later, so I can pick them up when I get off work. I've been scrambling to find a new sitter, but in the meantime, I got my daughter into an after-school program. Because there's no more sitter, there's no one to take her to her swim class. She's been complaining that she can't do it anymore and I told her that it's her own fault. She is why her sitter quit, and until I can find someone new, she won't get to do the fun activities that her sitter took her to. My husband agrees that there's nothing we can do, but thinks I was far too harsh with our daughter, saying she's only 6. Am I the butthole? Not the butthole. Her actions impacted someone enough to make them quit a job they were being paid to do. She has soiled her reputation as word spreads fast within the babysitter community if a child treats their caregiver like that. I imagine this wasn't 3 isolated events, but more like it was happening way more frequently, but those 3 times were when the babysitter was at her last straw. The consequences before didn't work and now the impact of her actions is bothering her. She is old enough to know now that her actions had consequences, and this is why she can't go to her fun activities. I definitely agree with this. Your daughter needs to learn the consequences of her actions. Many people in this sub seem to lack this skill, which, oh man, you wouldn't believe how many people loathe them. You weren't being harsh, instead, you're far better than most people on this sub. Definitely a great job at giving your daughter stern boundaries, to not let her grow up spoiled. She is a 6-year-old. Surely she should learn about respecting other people now? I'm slightly surprised she doesn't have a heavier punishment, so this is definitely a fair enough consequence. And it wasn't like you immediately yelled at your daughter. You gave her several chances, which she has repeatedly broken. Kudos to the babysitter as well, she took it like a champ instead of yelling at your daughter. Impressive. Not the butthole. I think original poster should also start getting ideas in her daughter's head that she doesn't own anything/anyone besides what's given to her, like toys, bed, clothes. Number 6 years old should have the idea that because their parents pay for a good/services means that the kid has the same power over it. Yep. Kids say we pay her, so I'm the boss's. Mum says no, I pay her. I'm her boss. And her job is to be your boss. Flip that script. Yes, I was looking for this answer. My smartass would have said, I didn't know you had money to pay the sitter, we must have been double paying her. And it still wasn't enough to deal with your BS. When my kid acts like he's the boss, I say, oh thank goodness. I was really tired of being the boss. So, you can get a job and go to work, pay the mortgage, all that stuff, I'm going back to school. He changes his tune pretty quickly. Same. I would rather choose to tell her no one owns anyone. You pay someone for their services, but that doesn't include crossing their boundaries. I know there are two big issues. 1, the kid has fundamentally misunderstood the dynamic and thinks she's the boss, and 2, that she thinks that is appropriate behavior in a situation where you are a boss of someone. Yeah, I was thinking that. Plus, a good way to drive it home is to tell her that a babysitter's job is to do a parent's job when they're not home. Does the kid think that they're the boss of their parents? Haha. Love this. And, what is with kids these days thinking it's all okay to boss an adult around? Because you know that poor babysitter had to listen to that BS all day. I feel worse for her friend's nanny. Oh, Jack. Yes. That poor nanny. Sadly, I think there are some kids, and parents, who think the kids are in charge. I didn't say anyone owned anyone else. What comment are you reading? Sorry, you are right. This wasn't meant for you. Edit. Weirdbirdnet was talking about how she shouldn't think she owns anything someone else owns. I grew up with a maid and I remember my mom saying, I have a maid to help me. You don't have a maid, go clean your room. Not the butthole op, you need to teach her how to treat others, especially those who are providing a service. I love this, what an answer. Also, I'm her boss, and you'll notice that I don't scream at her and treat her badly the way you do because that's not how a boss should behave. There's that old adage about people not quitting jobs but quitting bosses. The child became the boss anyone reasonable would want to leave. Laughing out loud. It's not even like that. Original poster pays the sitter for a service that the sitter provides. Original poster isn't the boss of the sitter as much as she is the boss of any person she pays for a service, like a plumber or an electrician she pays. Original poster has to agree to and follow the sitter's boundaries and conditions as much as the sitter does with op, a boss doesn't have to. This right here. More people need to understand the difference in dynamics between a boss and employee type relationship, and a client and service provider type relationship. Retail workers and food service workers seem to get it the worst, or get it the most frequently, at least from what I've seen. That poor kid in the drive-thru doesn't work for you, they provide you a service. Same with a plumber or a mechanic. They are not lesser than you, and they are not your subordinate. If anything, someone providing you a service almost demands more respect because they are doing a necessary task that, without them, you would have to do yourself. They don't work for you, you are asking them to do something for you and you are compensating them for their time and effort and skill. I always remember in Malcolm in the Middle, Lois calls out a neighbor for being mean to her gardener. She said he is a person with a skill you don't have. That's right. The mother is the babysitter's client. Not the butthole, that poor babysitter. Your daughter is learning that her horrid behavior has consequences. You're raising your kids to learn the meaning of the word no. That's good, and something that not enough parents do. I think we all need to pause to appreciate 6yo's lack of foresight, too. I'm the boss of you. I'll get you fired. Who did she think would drive her to swim practice even if she had been the boss and got the sitter fired, rather than her quitting? 6-year-old got a great lesson in natural consequences with a side lesson in thinking the problem all the way through. She's 6. She's not expected to have foresight. She's still at an age where the question "what did you think would happen?" isn't ever sarcastic because she doesn't have the life experience necessary to connect the possible consequences to what she's doing. No, of course at 6 she's not expected to have foresight, but it's exactly this sort of lesson that will begin teaching her to think through things better and where she begins to learn foresight. Original poster is doing an amazing job, not the butthole. I think though that after having several privileges taken away for misbehaving she should have learned by that last outburst. She's not expected to have foresight. No, she isn't, but she can be expected to learn to not behave like a butthole. I think they're saying that this is a prime opportunity to teach her about foresight and consequences of her actions, not that she should have already possessed those skills. Don't bite the hand that feeds you and all that. Not the butthole. Personally, I think pointing out that not being able to go swim is a direct result of not having a sitter and that not having a sitter is a result of her behavior is a good example of natural consequences. And when you get a new sitter, I would carefully go over appropriate behavior again. I would want to have a plan with the new sitter for if she tries the same tactics again. This child needs to be told mommy and daddy have the money to pay babysitter, not her. Babysitter is paid to take mommy and daddy's job while they work. Mommy and daddy are the boss, so when babysitter is their babysitter is the boss. A 6-year-old can understand that. Also that being someone's boss isn't free rein to abuse them. That's not what being a boss is about. To be fair, there are many adult bosses who have never learned this lesson either. As someone who had major behavioral issues as a child, this 1,000 times. Op's main tactic seems to be just taking things away as a punishment. That was my parents' go-to punishment as well. And I can tell you firsthand, that while that may work for most kids, for brats like us it doesn't do crap. TV privileges have nothing to do with being kind, and taking them away doesn't teach anything. Op needs to focus on the natural consequences of her actions. If you are mean to people, they will leave you. Doesn't matter if your parents are paying them or if you're their boss personally, you can't just treat people like that. And now she's seeing firsthand how she relied on the babysitter and how not having her anymore directly affects her. And now she can learn that it was her fault for driving her away. Original poster needs to come down hard on this fact. As someone who works with elementary schoolers, 6 years old is already too old for this kind of behavior. This attitude should have been nipped in the bud right away, and the longer dad tried to coddle her, the harder it's going to get to correct her behavior. I think it's important to be clear, from an early age, that most people don't actually have to like being around you. If you are mean to them or only think about yourself, they go away. Ultimately, those going away can have consequences, like not having someone take her to swim. When I was a kid, the big natural consequence my grandparents used on us was not being able to go on trips. I lived on a family farm. Mom couldn't travel much because animals to tend. Dad's parents loved to travel, day trips, weekends, several weeks at a time, even really long trips sometimes. Gram had a strict policy about behavior though. We had to cooperate with them and compromise with siblings and cousins or whoever was along. If you couldn't think of others on short trips, you couldn't go on long trips because being stuck in a motor home with someone who is sulking or mean really sucks. I think each of us had 1 or 2 incidents when we were sent home to mom and ended up missing all the fun stuff. Missing everything made cooperating with a cousin or sibling so we could each have a chance to do our favorite parts in turn, and maybe do a few things that we weren't interested in politely, was much better than staying home. Everything that needs to be said right here. Not the butthole. Edit. I'm editing to acknowledge this is unpopular on this sub but is backed by studies on child development and psychology, so I'm not ashamed that my opinion is deemed wrong here. Uda, your kid is 6. Sure, they are old enough to understand consequences, but nothing that your child did was developmentally inappropriate for her age, nor were they things that couldn't have been dealt with in a patient manner. Having kids tests your nerves. I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. It doesn't get easier. It gets only harder. Saying this is all your fault, you're a brat, is absolutely not the way to approach this. Maybe sit down. Apologize for how you spoke to her. Yes, apologize. Apologizing to kids when you are wrong is incredibly important and teaches personal responsibility and the ability to admit they were wrong in the future, and explain what you really meant. Tell your 6-year-old when she treats people bad and makes them feel bad they might not want to be around her. And that the way she treated her babysitter made her feel bad. Cite specific examples. Remember when you said this, remember when you did this. Adding, once your child acknowledges she did something wrong, and she made the sitter feel bad, then bring up missing out on swimming as a consequence of that because no, she has to go to aftercare elsewhere. And that when you do find a new sitter she can go back to swimming, but she's going to have to try really hard and treat her new babysitter the way she wants people to treat her so she doesn't miss out on it anymore. Instill empathy instead of shame in your child while still framing what happened as a consequence of how she acted. I will always recommend reading and research on child development. Your daughter is old enough to understand, but she is not old enough to be shamed into compliance without lasting psychological effects. I'm mostly voting not the butthole in this thread, but this is exactly the kind of contrary post I wish I saw more of. I'd throw you an upvote for a well-argued post even if you didn't have me thinking about whether you were right. Basically, I'd give you an award if I wasn't a cheap butthole. Thank you. I really have no problem with people disagreeing with my opinions anywhere in life, honestly, as long as they are sound and well-reasoned. Most of the responses are she's old enough to know better, and that is just factually incorrect. She's old enough to learn better. We need to hold parents to a higher standard than we hold kids to. Also, the award thing, I feel, because I'm cheap as F too. I read it through again and I didn't see that she called her a brat. The harshest part is this: I was furious with my daughter and let her have it. Which is pretty open to interpretation. It's possible that she did take it too far, but I'm willing to give original poster the benefit of the doubt based on her earlier descriptions of how she dealt with the behavior when it first cropped up. Or do you mean that the babysitter could have been more patient? I also don't think feeling shame is necessarily traumatic. It's normal, in my opinion, to feel ashamed of your behavior when you really understand that your words or actions hurt somebody else, no matter how kindly someone communicates that to you. I think it becomes harmful if when your parent doesn't help you to move past that feeling and learn from the experience. Not to mention, original poster explicitly said she had a calm discussion with her daughter. Like, I don't understand how this comment has so many upvotes when it's not even getting the facts right. I agree, being told this is happening because of your behavior isn't traumatic at all. Even if it can be called shaming, a little shame isn't bad. I felt ashamed whenever my mom genuinely told me she was disappointed in me, which made me not want to act out anymore. She already had conversations with the kid. This wasn't 0 to 60. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.